As we wait, if you all don't mind dropping in your name and where from in Virginia you are right now, where in the Commonwealth are you? We see a couple people we know. Hey, y'all, some new faces, new names on Zooms. This is the CannaJustice report out from General Assembly for 2024. And we are excited to get started in just a few minutes. Hey, Jabria. Jabria was also at our lobby day. Thanks for coming by and being supportive. Hey, Kelly from Reston. We love Kelly. Justice for Virginia. No problem. Take your time. All right, we're going to give it just one more minute and we will get started. I know it's evening, it's Tuesday. I don't know if y'all have been watching, but we've had some movement happening from the governor today. So lots of things going on. What's up, Kevin from Richmond? Hey, Jennifer. We got it. We're just letting some folks in. We're doing this Zoom convo style. We've got the CannaJustice Coalition here, and we're going to go through our priority bills. We're going to talk about cannabis, of course, and I'm going to just mute some folks. But it's all right. You know, technology happens sometimes. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Chelsea Higgs Wise. I'm the co-founder and executive director of Marijuana Justice, and I'd really like to welcome everybody here today. We're here to talk about what's been going on in General Assembly, what can we expect next, also just to really answer some questions that people have had and talk about, of course, cannabis and all things around the criminalization as well as the commercialization of cannabis, but also about some other really important pieces that touch all of our lives around safety and public health as well. So I'm really excited for the CannaJustice Coalition for coming back together to do this. If you've been around, we've done this now for 3-4 years, and every time after session we come together, and then in July you can also keep watch on our individual platforms, and maybe we'll also come back together to just talk about what new laws have come to pass. So again, my name is Chelsea Higgs Wise. I'm excited to have y'all here. Really quickly before we go forward, I'm just going to have the coalition introduce themselves, just the other two speakers that we have from the coalition, and then we're going to have another speaker that will be joining us in just a few minutes from Justice Forward. I'm going to pass it over to Ms. Kalmia.
Hey y'all, my name is Kalmia Harris and I'm the executive director at Virginia Student Power Network. And we are a statewide network of students, youth, organizations, community members who are organizing towards a world without police, without prisons, where our students and our youth actually have autonomy in their lives and have a say in their educational institutions and their governmental institutions. So we do that in a lot of ways, but one of those is through the legislative advocacy and issue advocacy that we do. So we showed up this session and also did a lot of education work as well. So excited to talk with the rest of the coalition partners today about that. I'll pass it to Val.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Valerie Slater, and I am the executive director of the organization Rise for Youth, which stands for Reinvest in Supportive Environments for Youth. I'm also a criminal defense attorney and representing exclusively children. And I am very excited to be here with you all this evening. A little bit about Rise. We are all about uplifting the voices of young folks and allowing them to be a part of making changes to the systems that often have so much agency over them. It's kind of an amazing thing for them to realize that they are powerful and that they then begin to exercise that power to make changes happen. We are all about shutting down prisons and creating avenues and pathways for young folks that have been in trouble or that may be headed towards trouble or that just care about each other and want to make sure that there are pathways towards success that have nothing to do with the legal system, that have nothing to do with police, that have nothing to do with all of these systems and agencies that are often hemming kids in rather than allowing their minds to expand and for them to dream. And so we do that in many, many different ways. But again, like Kaliyah just shared, one of those ways is through the General Assembly and advocacy for political process, for laws that truly do empower and create pathways for young folks to be successful. And so I'm excited to share some of the things that we have been working on. We've got some good news, we got some bad news, but you know what? We are going to continue to fight on, and I'm excited for the fight with y'all this evening, or to talk about the fight with y'all this evening. And I'm going to pass it to Rob, who is the fourth of us.
Good. Hey, I'm Rob Poggenklass. I am the executive director of Justice Forward Virginia. Justice Forward Virginia is a statewide advocacy group founded by public defenders and committed to an evidence-informed contemporary criminal legal reform. We helped pass a few dozen laws and repeal some others during the 2020 and 2021 sessions. And we've been working with the folks here and many others to protect the progress that we made during that time over the last couple of years. So we've grown quite a bit. When I started, we had a board of 5, and now we have a board of 11. So we're moving and hoping to continue the progress that we've made.
Amazing. All right. Well, thanks so much to our coalition. Again, that's Marijuana Justice, Rise for Youth, Virginia Student Power Network, and Justice Forward. So next, I'm going to let you all know what it's going to look like this evening. We're going to invite all of the coalition to go through their main points about what they fought for, what happened, and what to expect next. And then we'll, answer you all's questions. And I'm also going to give a little brief about federal cannabis marijuana, what's going on that level too. And so we should be done around 7:15 the latest. And you can always find this recording on YouTube and continue to follow all of our platforms if you have more questions. So I'm going to pass it over to Valerie and tell us what has been going on with Rise for You.
Thanks, Chelsea. Yes. So this session, as in previous sessions, we have a narrative that we have been working from, and it's all about we need to take a public health approach to public safety, and that's all about redefining the vital signs. And our platform for this whole idea has been moving the Department of Juvenile Justice to the Health and Human Resources Secretary. Because when you look at the kids that find themselves in trouble with the law, the overwhelming majority of them have either mental health or different issues that all can be serviced through the agencies that are under the Health and Human Resources Secretary. And so for the last 3 years, we have fought for legislation that would convene a work group or that would ask the JLARC, the Joint Legislation Audit and Review Commission. I said that thing. but would ask them to conduct a study to look at moving the department so that we could do it responsibly. And we have had that legislation pass overwhelmingly. We've had it vetoed. We have had different iterations of what has gone on with that bill. And I just learned today that JLARC has taken up the study, and they will be doing it, and it will be completed in 2024. So we are incredibly excited for that piece of legislation that we have worked for several years on now. And now to know that even without the General Assembly formalizing that law into law, or a joint resolution, that JLARC is indeed going to conduct the study. And Rise for Youth is going to be giving some input as a stakeholder and as experts in this field. Rise for Youth, that's what we do. And so I'm excited that we're going to be able to have a hand in ensuring that JLARC has all of the information, and most importantly, information from the young folks and from the community members that are most impacted by this particular issue. Something else that we worked on is establishing a minimum age of 11 years old for young people to be tried or to be charged with a crime here in Virginia. This is also a piece of legislation that we have worked on for several years, and it has passed the General Assembly. It passed party lines. Nevertheless, it did pass this year, and only to make it to the governor's desk and be vetoed. And so we're really disheartened that in Virginia, we are still unwilling to say we will not prosecute 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds. And we're not willing to say that those are young people who are too young to understand the criminal process. And we are still allowing the rhetoric from the Department of Juvenile Justice to rule the way we are treating our youngest, our babies, without an age of jurisdiction that literally says, a 6-year-old, and we've done it here in Virginia. Can we just be honest? Virginia has prosecuted 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds, 8-year-olds, and the majority of those cases are dismissed, or those children are treated through the child in need of services or the child in need of supervision processes. But what we should never do is have children that young standing before a judge on offenses that are adjudicatable. And that's what you would call it, right? You don't find children guilty. You find them, you adjudicate them delinquent. And so we should not be doing that. But we have yet some work to do because our governor has vetoed this bill, which is incredibly disheartening. Other bills that we worked on, we want to eliminate fines and fees for children, because we all know that kids aren't paying. They're not paying restitution. They're not paying court costs. They're not paying any of those things, right? Because they don't have jobs. How many 10, 11, 12-year-olds do you know that are making the money to pay the bills, right? And so we need to stop penalizing families and causing families to bear the burden of whatever court costs, court fines, court fees, restitution. Families ought not bear that burden. And so, unfortunately, those are bills that did not make it out of the General Assembly. We have one that is still, we're going to see what the governor does with it. And because we separated traffic from the criminal fees. And so the traffic bill, it made it to the governor's desk, and we've not heard yet what the fate of that particular bill is. And so we shall see. Another bill is to create a suppression mechanism when parents are not notified prior to their child being interrogated by law enforcement. Now, see, it was 2020 that we fought and got a bill passed that said, what we're going to do is we're going to require law enforcement to notify a parent before they interrogate a child. Because children, they might say anything just to try to get home, right? But if we have that moment of pause, now I'm not going to tell you a story, right? It'd be better for a child to be talking to an attorney. That would be most ideal, is that they would understand fully what their rights are, that they would be advised that, don't say anything that is going to be against your rights, that is going to be against your best interest. That would be ideal. But we at least took the first step of saying, children, you cannot interrogate them without first notifying a parent. Unfortunately, in practice, we passed that law, but courts were calling it harmless error when law enforcement was not abiding by that law. And so we came back this year to add the enforcement mechanism, basically saying if you interrogate a child and you knew and you knowingly did not contact their parent first, then it is going to be possible for those statements to be suppressed and those statements not to be used against that child. And so if we've got to put in a suppressing mechanism, then so be it. And so that bill has not made it to the governor's desk yet. We're still waiting to see what the fate of it is. Matter of fact, it hasn't even been signed by the Speaker of the House or by the President of the Senate. And so we're in limbo. We're waiting. It was just enrolled yesterday. That's maddening, right?
And Valerie, just for people that don't understand why it's concerning that the president and the speaker haven't signed it, can you just quickly just tell people the process a little bit? And then, because this happened for most of our bills March 9th, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. And so there are different ways so bills, they are going to go through the chamber. If it passes one chamber, then it's going to cross over into the other chamber. It's got to make it through that same path. And once it has passed in both chambers, the Senate and the House, then, and when it's identical after it has passed through both chambers, then the president of the Senate must sign it. First, it's enrolled, then the president will sign it, and the Speaker of the House. They both will sign it. Then it is transferred to the governor's desk. If it does not get signed, it cannot be transferred. If it does not transfer to the governor's desk, it can't possibly be passed. And so just like it can die in committee, it can die because it doesn't pass that the full floor vote. It can die the death of never making it to the governor's desk. And so here we are, and it was just signed, it was just enrolled. It hasn't even been signed yet. Oh my. So we are waiting to see the fate of that particular bill that would hold not only law enforcement accountable, but judges. It would cause them to follow the letter of the law. Don't decide that just because we passed a law doesn't mean you have to actually uphold and enforce that law. So let's hold law enforcement and let's give the judges what they need in order for them to say, you know what, it isn't harmless error. It is literally an encroachment on the rights of a child, and we will not allow that to be the way we will treat children who have come in contact with the law. So another bill that we worked on is to eliminate the transfer of children who have been trafficked or who have been abused. If they commit a crime against their abuser, that could potentially get them transferred to circuit court. If there's evidence that they have been trafficked, then that evidence can be used to potentially keep them from being transferred. Now, it's sad that we've got to take that route, that we're not able to just say, this is a trafficked child, we're not going to prosecute them in circuit court. Well, we're not doing it that way in Virginia. But at least if we can get this bill passed, that would say we are going to at least have this considered. That bill also has not been sent to the governor's desk. It has not been signed by the speaker or by the president. So we are waiting to see. We also had a bill that would have provided for sealing of records of children. That bill died. It died. There were two iterations of it. We had a Senate version that was powerful and strong. It died very quickly. We had a House version that was incredibly watered down, and it got watered down to the point where I wasn't even sure we would even support it, and then it died. So there's that. Let's see. And Rob, I know you will go into much more detail on that. And finally, a bill to institute restorative practices in schools, and that bill's dead. So there's that. That is the fate of the bills. So literally 2 are still alive, or 3 are still alive and fighting. We're just not sure. We're waiting to see. And that is traffic fines and fees, um, the suppression of statements made by young people that when their parents were not notified, and the elimination of transfer, or the consideration of evidence to keep kids from being transferred to circuit court. And our crowning jewel at this point is that the study is going to move forward to consider moving the Department of Juvenile Justice to the Health and Human Resources Secretary, which again, like I said, that is the foundation, right? Let's lay the foundation that we want to redefine the vital signs. We want to take a public health approach to public safety. We want to treat children as children and stop criminalizing and finding punitive ways to deal with, because it does not change the mind of a child when you punish them. When you redirect, when you train and you teach and you give opportunity, that is what is going to build a better future and raise healthier children here in Virginia. Thanks, Chelsea.
Valerie, such important work as always. To hear the bills dying is really sad, and I was there and watching as some of these discussions were had. But the news that you're sharing with us about the study to literally look at moving the juvenile justice system to the health secretariat, that's something that we really kind of just say, can that happen? And you're really pushing that and showing us that it's possible and that it's necessary, right? And so we thank you for that work. I'm really excited to continue to watch that, and we'll be looking out for your other bills before, seeing what the governor is going to do. And we'll make sure that everyone has a chance to come back and share information on how to follow all of the organizations as well then. Up next, we're going to invite Virginia Student Power Network, Kalmia Harris, up to talk about what the students and young people have been working on this past session.
Hey y'all, so as Val was sharing, it has been a wild ride this session. For us, we tracked over 50 bills this session. It was the most we've ever done. So we have different priority issue areas that we focus on. This session, we focused on Palestine solidarity, of course, with the ongoing genocide happening, and Virginia legislators trying to be a part of that and continue to be a part of that. We tracked education bills, of course. Queer liberation was one of our priority issue areas. Of course, the criminal legal system, reproductive justice, and housing. So I'm just going to briefly go through each section area and share some highlights. But as Chelsea said, we'll share our Instagram information that has a lot more of the other bills that I won't share here. In terms of Palestine solidarity, there were quite a few bills this session, and this isn't the first session where this has happened, but it was very clear this session that legislators wanted to support the state of Israel. So there were 5 anti-Palestine bills, including ones that conflated anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism and threatened to take public funding away from higher education institutions. There were bills that just professed Virginia's support for the state of Israel. And then there were also bills that were anti-boycott, divestment, and sanctions, and making penalties for public entities that support businesses that engage in that tactic. So all in all, it was a whole lot of anti-Palestine bills. So our folks showed up in mass, along with our partners at Virginia Coalition for Human Rights and Students for Justice in Palestine chapters all over the state to effectively kill all of the harmful bills this session. With education, I'll share the education and queer liberation priorities together because they were very much intertwined this session. But the Republican legislators especially continued their attack on trans youth throughout the state by proposing at least 4 anti-trans sports ban bills. We helped to testify in opposition to kill those bills. They also had a gender affirming care ban bill that would have made it so that folks are not able to access that care. Done, killed. 2 forced outing bills that would have forced teachers and employees at public schools K through 12 to notify parents if their children are using different names or pronouns at school, that they would have to essentially out those students to their families. We also supported killing those bills that are not going to make it this session. And to Val's point, we also supported the restorative practices bill. I think they might still be alive, Val. I think they were enrolled yesterday. Both of the bills went to a conference committee. And basically what these bills would do would make it so that K through 12 schools have to, I think the language got a little bit softer by the end, but are encouraged to use at least one restorative practice before they expel a student or suspend them or use like an exclusionary practice, because we know that don't work. And so using restorative practices first before using those. And so those bills went through a whole long battle. They weren't identical throughout the process. They went to conference. It looks like they made it out and have been enrolled, but similar to the bills that Valerie shared, they haven't been signed by the Senate or the House leaders. So after that, if they are signed, then they will be on Youngkin's desk. And the other one we were really excited about was Senator Rome's free school lunches bill, which she has continued to put forth session after session. And finally, this one passed through. So it's been signed by all the leaders. It's on the governor's desk, and he has until the 8th to make that happen. And I think free school lunch is bipartisan. Come on, feed the babies. So those were our education and career liberation bills. Criminal legal system, which is probably what y'all are here for. Of course, we helped with the marijuana legalization bills, and boy, that was a battle. From them trying to add mandatory minimums and us having to stop that, to just making sure that they were really prioritizing the people most affected by the war on drugs. A lot of our role this session was asking them not to add criminal aspects to the bill, and utilizing our expertise that we've learned with our coalition. And so finally, there were bills that we're able to support as a coalition that made it out of session. Like, what? They made it out of the House, they made it out of the Senate, and they're waiting for Youngkin. Youngkin need to sign them. Come on. That's all I'm saying on that. Along with that, with the coalition, we supported the work of Justice Forward and the rest of our partners with the defelonization studies, of course, supporting that work. It was a whole bunch of JLARC studies. That one did not make it through this session, but who knows? Maybe next session we'll get some data. And then we supported marijuana resentencing, which is waiting on Youngkin. Come on. And the one that I'm really passionate about is that we opposed the pre-textual stop ban bills again. Shout out to Justice Forward again for that. They keep coming every session with, I'm talking not just one bill, but 3-4 bills that are really chipping away at the pretextual stop ban, which, if you're like, what the heck is that? That's the bill that stops the police from being able to pull us over for things like dangling objects, for having a light out, that BS that can lead to us dying at the end of the encounter. And so they basically just keep trying to, well, let us stop you for exhaust, let us stop you for lights. And so we're here helping our partners to make sure we see all those bills each session and shut them down, which is what we did. And then they also had an anti-sanctuary bill where they were trying to make it so Virginia can't have sanctuary cities, shut that down with other partners. And last but not least, on criminal justice, is they tried to attack our bail funds again this session, trying to make it so that they would have to be reporting to the Department of Criminal Justice, and essentially be regulated through them. And when I tell y'all, the community came out in mass. Shout out to Richmond Bail Fund, and all of the other folks who came out to oppose and kill that bill. Now, we almost done with my little report back. Repro justice. Y'all know in Virginia and across the country, our rights are under attack. I mean, just hands down. And so while there weren't as many like abortion ban bills as we saw last session and outright attacks in that way, there were some really good bills to support, including extradition prohibition bill that would make it, if the governor signs that thing, so that our medical professionals that are performing these abortions can actually do that without the fear of being extradited to states that have criminalized abortion. And that also helps out our abortion funds and those groups as well to not be criminalized. So Youngkin need to sign that. Don't expect them to, but it would be nice. And then there were a couple constitutional amendment bills that were moved to 2025. Those are bills that would enshrine the right to reproductive justice into our state constitution. We are in high support of those and we'll be supporting them when they come back. And housing, y'all, we know the rent is too damn high. There's mold. The landlords are out here just scamming, right? And so we supported New Virginia Majority and other partner organizations to support the anti-rent gouging bills, also known as rent control. It's just a nicer way to say it. Those bills are not moving forward this session, but y'all better believe we are still organizing with tenants. There's actually some really exciting events coming up through New Virginia Majority to engage in housing justice and pressure folks. So those were the bills that we took action on, and we had lobby days. We did a march to the Capitol, and it was a good session for us in terms of engagement, but we didn't see enough action, I would say. But I'll, with that, wrap it up and pass it back to you, Chelsea.
Absolutely. And I see some comments in the chat about the rent being too high. Kalia, you're not wrong. And you're right. We're seeing people that have certain levels of degrees and status that still cannot afford actual houses. And so it is so important that we have all of these conversations. If you're like, why are we talking about this? It's because drug policy impacts all of this, like these collateral consequences, these youth pieces. And this is why we have to keep an eye on this, because if we really want people to feel the relief, then we have to enlist with our partners to watch all of these different topics. Up next, I am headed over to Justice Forward. And Rob and those public defenders, some of my favorite people to have around, hardworking folks, would love to just hear about what y'all did this past session and what it's looking like now.
Yeah, thank you. What a great group this is. It's nice to be in a relaxed setting like this versus when we're at the GAB and everything's all like, woof, anxiety. So others have mentioned it already, but I'm gonna repeat, before we go into some of the disappointments of our session, which have mainly happened since the vetoes started, I want to mention some of the positive things. Like, one is we're not moving backward. There were some things that happened in 2022 and 2023 where it was like, are we going to move backward? And now I think we've gotten to a place where, at least for these 2 years, we're not moving backward. But that doesn't mean they're not trying. And so we were there to defend the pretext attempt to repeal the pretext. And then we were there to defend against enacting a new law to expand felony murder for overdoses. So when somebody gives drugs to another person and the person dies, they want to enact a new felony murder statute that would allow people to get prosecuted for murder when somebody dies of an overdose. And that hearing, I think, took over an hour in the Senate. It was really intense and emotional on both sides. The recovery community came out in full force, as they did last year, and explained why, but for the grace of God, it could have been me, and really explain why that bill doesn't make any sense, to continue to punish drug use. So that was defeated. They came again to try and enact presumptions against bail. That was, we heard straight from the administration that they wanted to put back the presumptions against bail that we eliminated back in 2021. We were able to stop that effort. They came for the speaker's probation reform, which Justice Ford worked on back in 2021, that caps the amount of jail time people can get for technical violations of probation, like testing positive or missing an appointment. We put a stop to that. So, you know, it became clear pretty early that the defense was solid. So that was heartening. And then we passed some really good stuff. We got some stuff through the General Assembly. One that we didn't get, Kallia mentioned the study resolutions, which Chelsea and Chuck from Julian worked on with us in the off season. Really, I thought, powerful evidence-informed bills to take a look at the nonsense drug policy we have in Virginia. We've gotten so much good progress on marijuana, but there's so much more to do with other drugs. And this would just take a first step. We went and tried to do defelonization in 2021 and 2022, and it didn't get very far. So we thought, let's take a step back, get some data. And the House Rules Committee just said, no, not this year. But we'll regroup. We'll figure out a next step and come back again. It did get bipartisan support in the Senate. It passed with all 21 Democrats and one Republican from Southwest Virginia. They had the vote, and everybody was voting no except him, and he kind of went like this, and he said, "You know what? We're not going to arrest our way out of this." And he actually carried some really good legislation himself, Todd Pillion, to put Narcan in schools, and to he's got a bill to allow substance use people in recovery to become substance use peer recovery specialists. So there's some opportunity to work with both parties on drug policy. As far as things that we did get passed out of both chambers, we passed a pretty cool bill to ban these horrible things in plea agreements called Fourth Amendment waivers. So not related to probation, just when you when you sign a plea agreement, prosecutors all over the place, Richmond, Harrisonburg, Spotsylvania, Fredericksburg, Virginia Beach, just all over, they put in these provisions that say, by signing this plea agreement, I agree to waive my Fourth Amendment rights for a period of 1, 3, 5, 15. I've seen 20 years. 20 years you waive your Fourth Amendment rights, which means not just your probation officer can come and look at what's going on. Police on the street can stop you. And if they find something, you have no ability to challenge it the next go round. So we passed that. Unfortunately, party lines could not get a single Republican to go along with it. And the governor vetoed it in that bloodbath of vetoes last Wednesday night. Another one that we worked really hard on and have advocates in the autism community and in the mental health community have been working on for 5 years, which is to create an affirmative defense for people with intellectual or developmental disabilities or mental illness or neurocognitive disorders, to have an affirmative defense when they're charged with assault on law enforcement. So these folks, they may have a tic, a spitting tic. They may, just react because they're being touched and they don't want to be touched. And it's because of their disability or their mental illness. And we know that, unfortunately, a lot of those folks get arrested and go to jail and face a felony with a mandatory minimum 6 months for what is often no injury or very, very minor injury like a scratch. And the governor vetoed that and said it would weaken penalties against criminals. Really talking in awful language about people in the disability and mental health communities. It's indefensible. The the language that he's using, and the chiefs of police were out there cheering him on. So that's discouraging. That's a bill that's been 5 years in the works. Senator Boysko and Delegate Watts have worked really hard on that legislation. We made compromises with the sheriffs and the state police to get them to neutral. But the governor would not sign that. That was disappointing. Youth expungement, one minor correction to Valerie. We did get that House bill through. So it is small and it's not what we wanted, but it's a foot in the door. It was enrolled yesterday. It's on its way to the governor. So we'll see. He hasn't vetoed expungement stuff yet. So we'll just wait and see what happens there. I think that's what I got, Chelsea. Back to you.
All right. Yeah, thanks so much, Rob. And just watching the vetoes and some of that, particularly those with mental illness and intellectual disabilities, was really hard. And you mentioned that, a lot of that can be from their disabilities, and sometimes it can also be from their medications. A lot of these psychotropic drugs that folks take for a really long time have been known to cause a lot of these tics that would also create behaviors that could be seen as aggressive towards law enforcement or things like that. So, but so much work, and you can see, it's really cool to see how people have worked together and talked about this bill, or this bill has come up and this one was fixed. And that's, again, why we really, it does take a village to watch these bills and continue to move forward. So I am going to now move into, let's talk about weed. So this was a really exciting year for cannabis in Virginia because we have not had this type of support for an actual market or retail bill since 2021. And in 2021 is when we passed, as the first state in the U.S. South, to repeal the prohibition on possession, consumption, as well as home cultivation. So right now in Virginia, you can possess up to an ounce. You can share up to an ounce with adults 21 and up, and you can grow up to 4 plants labeled properly in each home. And that's what's been the status quo right now in Virginia, along with more criminal penalties. And so this year we worked on 3 main bills that I'll go over, and I'm going to try and practice a little bit of technology and share my screen. The first one I want to talk about is the parental protections bill. That unfortunately was one of the first to be vetoed in the group. And, we've brought this the last couple years just to really look. Last year, we looked particularly at marijuana. This year, the bill actually said all authorized substances, which would have also included prescribed medications. If a prescribed medication couldn't be a reason for custody be impacted or visitation within like child family court. And we really wanted to see after 2021 that since marijuana is legal for 2020 for 21-year-olds and up, that as a parent, that couldn't be a reason why your custody was still impacted. So, I want to talk a little bit about this bill because it was a simple one, I will say, just to explain of, hey, if you're using something that is written by a prescription, that's a prescription or is now legal, it shouldn't impact your custody as a parent. Why this was really important is because, number one, this really started with mandatory testing in hospitals. And so we really want us to start bringing this up of how parents, particularly pregnant people, are being mandatory tested in hospitals, and just the presence of marijuana was a reason. Also, going to courts, a lot of times the judges would ask for a clean drug screen, not taking into account of marijuana that is now legal. And we also had methadone in there, and that can still be something that is controversial in many visitation and parental pieces. What was also written in this piece is that DSS and CPS would also start looking at marijuana separately from other drugs or substances. Right now, as a social worker, and what we see in paperwork is that it just says drugs. when social workers and intake workers or anyone working in the family court or system are checking what substances are there or what is present, at the end of the day, it's all labeled under drugs. And so really just trying to look at, exactly what drugs, and that's not to make cannabis like the elite drug that it's better, but sometimes people are going to need help and health based on what's going on and what they're consuming at that point. As well as to really be accurate particularly when we're criminalizing people through family court. But this was vetoed, unfortunately, but we are going to bring it back next year, and we're actually working with some folks right now to make sure that we target hospitals, particularly to include people that are pregnant and being also tested. And yes, Jennifer, that we were very upset, and I've been telling people that what happened in the administration actually gave us recommendations on the bill that we thought would make them happy, and they still vetoed it. So fun times in Virginia. One of the bills that we were also really excited to see be moving this year was honestly one of the reasons that we started this organization, and that is the resentencing bill. I know people might be thinking, oh, the legalization retail bill. No, marijuana justice was really formed because we realized that legalization was coming. And if we were not part of it, if we were not involved in the movement, then there would be people that were and are the most impacted. Like the most impacted by prohibition. We say that phrase a lot, the most impacted, right? But literally the most impacted by marijuana prohibition are the people that are still locked up behind bars and caged, of course, as well as people that have somehow like lost their lives due to the overcriminalization and bad drug policy around marijuana. So I'm showing this. This is something that we worked with Last Prisoner Project. They're a national organization that works to free all people still incarcerated for cannabis. I'll talk a little bit more about them later too, but we worked on this bill. This is I'm showing this because I want to show people what we wanted at the top and what the bill included at the very beginning. As you've heard from some of my comrades towards the bill's evolution, things start to change. But this was what I really want to just show is that we had a really good bill with Senator Williams Graves that, number one, talked about an automatic process, right? So this would be something that the government would actually identify people still inside in prisons, jails, as well as community supervision. That means that they have like an ankle monitor. So the government, the state would actually identify those people for an automatic process, versus what would happen is that people inside would have to petition and say, hey, I might be eligible. Can you check for me? No, you know who they are. You locked them up. You got the list. So you do it. Enforceable timelines. As we look back for people still incarcerated, we were able to put in a timeline that would get people to have a new hearing for their marijuana charge within a year and a half of this passing. So this would not go on forever. It was an enforceable timeline for these decisions. And just to be clear, I'm talking about resentencing for people that are inside, like they actually get to go to a judge and get their sentence looked at to be reduced or to be taken down to time served, under the assumption and under the direction of the bill that says the judge would consider that marijuana is now legal. One thing that we didn't get in this bill that was taken out is this broad eligibility scheme. What that means is that we really, in the beginning of the bill, Senator Williams Graves was willing to get up there and say, if the arrest was caused because somebody said they smelled weed, we want that to be part of the resentencing process, because honestly, that's the real gateway of marijuana. And I love that she did it. It was important for her to say it. We all kind of knew that was taken it a little far that we might not go, but it's important for the principle of it, to be really honest. I say Rob cracking up because it's important, but we did it. And it was really great for her to put that on record. But that's what we mean by broad eligibility. We also had in there that some people would be able to petition if they did not have a certain type of marijuana charge that is now legal. They also removed that. So the group of folks that would have benefited from this bill got smaller and smaller as it went through committee, unfortunately. I did talk about the clear guidance. The bill said that the judge would have to consider that marijuana is legal. We would want the presumption for release that hopefully if they don't go to the judge and get more time, right? And then the part that if you hang around me long enough, you're going to hear me talk about oversight and reporting. Like it's my favorite sentence because I do it in just about all of the bills, because it's the way, y'all, that we come back after these bills have passed and shown them if it's working or if it's not. And so we also put some oversight and reporting in there that was able to be in the resentencing bill, to make sure it's actually doing what it says it's doing. That bill passed, and we are now waiting. They have until April 8th, the governor, to do something with it. So we're up there for that one. And last but not least, I'm going to talk about the retail bill. The retail bill was really exciting this year. I'm going to drop a link in the chat that really just goes over everything in the retail bill. I'm not going to go over all of the parts. I'm going to go over the equity parts that I think are really sexy. And if folks have more questions, please let me know after I'm done. We can definitely dive into some questions or any comments that you all have. But this retail bill, first of all, number one, I'm going to say shout out to Delegate Paul Krzyk. Paul Krzyk was really the champion for equity this session for marijuana. And, it's both bills started a little difficult, but he was able to take a lot of insight from stakeholders to get equity in there in a really meaningful way, in a really familiar way from when we were talking about it in 2021. If y'all were around in 2021, we had some really great ideas to do this with a priority of equity, and those most impacted would be included. In the last few years, that ain't show up, but this year it did. On the Senate side, Senator Aaron Rouse carried the Senate bill. I will say that was the bill that he introduced was formerly a Republican bill last year. So we were excited to have a Black Caucus member introduce a cannabis bill. We were not excited about what the bill said, unfortunately, and we had to do a lot of work to help get him on board. He is newer in the Senate. He's newer to cannabis, but I do appreciate that with certain folks and a lot of folks in this room and people hearing from him, he was able to join with Delegate Paul Krzyk for a compromise bill. So if folks were like hearing a House and Senate bill, just know at the end we got down to one, and Marijuana Justice and the folks on this call that were working on it we're really happy about it. So what made me so happy about it, particularly because this is a retail bill, so we're talking about who gets to make money. Our equity pieces, which they now changed to micro. I don't know why they named equity micro, y'all. There's actually a micro license out there in normal cannabis speak, but it's not your typical micro license. Micro usually means small. That's not what it means in this Virginia context. It actually means equity. So, but the really cool thing about the substance of an of a micro license is who gets to qualify. So number one, Kalia mentioned earlier that we really had to continue to push in there that people that had past marijuana crimes could be part of the sales and the retail. And that made possible in this bill. So as long as, unfortunately, if you have a felony, you have to wait 7 years after your felony to get a license. But if you also you can still participate, right? So no one is barred because of your charges. But for felonies, you have to wait 7 years. But if you had a previous marijuana misdemeanor, you were included in the micro license. And as a micro license applicant, you also got a certain preference and higher consideration for a license. Okay, so when the Cannabis Control Authority is going through applications, there were certain criteria, and one of them is if you had a past marijuana misdemeanor, that means you got qualified for this particular license where you could benefit. So if you had a past marijuana misdemeanor, if your mama, daddy, or kid had a past marijuana misdemeanor, you qualified for this. If you're a veteran, if you grew up in an historically economically disadvantaged area, aka if your area was pretty poor, if you had a Pell Grant, or if you went to school where at least 30% of y'all had Pell Grants. And that covers HBCUs as well as other PWIs, predominantly white institutions across the Commonwealth as well. So basically, if you had a misdemeanor, if you grew up in a poor area, you went to school because you didn't have money and you got a Pell Grant, or a veteran, you were able to get into this group with a higher consideration. And with this equity license, you also qualify for hundreds of thousands of dollars of startup capital. Let me say that again. With this license, we were able to build into the budget hundreds of thousands of dollars per license, micro license for startup capital. Okay. The average conversations was anything between 200,000 to 400,000. That is what would come out of what we call the Cannabis Equity Business Loan Fund that was created in 2021. Okay. And when the bill started, it's so major. When the bill started, all that money was tied to medical programs. We were able to untie that baby, okay? We were able to not link it to where certain stakeholders had certain relationships, but there is still an incubator program if a micro business wants it, right? But you are not handcuffed to medical operators for that. So that is a really sexy part of this bill. Myself, as well as the JLARC team, remember Valerie was talking about JLARC folks? They actually got their interns and other folks to look at other equity portions and states across the country. And they're now willing to put our equity language up against anybody else's in the country to say ours is the best and also cannot be constitutionally challenged. Okay. So we've worked really hard on that. I'm really grateful that JLARC has taken an interest in that, because it was, hey, this coalition's 2020 bill that also got JLARC involved. And because they've been involved the last 4 years, they have a real stake in also making this work. So that is a big part of what makes our bill so exciting. So if this bill were to pass for retail, we've got that amazing license, but like, what are the dates? What does that look like, Chelsea? Well, if this were to pass, that means that September 1 of this year, the Cannabis Control Authority would start to accept applications, right? They would start to accept applications, and that doors would open. Like the first marijuana sale in Virginia would happen May of 2025. The reason for that time between September and May is because it gives folks time to open their business, right? If we just open it all at once, guess who would get started to sell the weed first? It would be the big boys, right? So we really pushed for that time in between for folks to get started, as well as, remember that money I talked about? It's going to take time for that money to come, right? So we know, yeah, Jennifer, it's a good timeline. We still wanted more time, but you know, because it for first crops to grow and that sort of thing. But this is what we were able to negotiate. This license fee. Thank you for this. The license fee is there. It's going to be decided by the Cannabis Control Authority. But remember that micro license? Remember it? Remember it? Yeah, we're getting those waived. Waived license fees for micro licenses. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I tell y'all, Paul Krizik really did the Lord's work on this one, and I will give a shout out to Speaker Don Scott that would come in and use his big boy power and basically say that how the House is not going to pass anything unless it has the equity portions. And so we were able to really push this all the way to the governor without the House and the Senate being scared of the governor. And I'm really proud of that. So I'm going to stop right there for the Virginia stuff. I do have some federal things that I'm going to talk about, but I want to stop first and open up any questions from the folks that are signed in about any Virginia things. I'm a facilitator, so I don't mind a little bit of silence, but if the questions, think about them, drop them in, and I can also start sharing some federal stuff. But right now, are there any questions from anybody? You can type them in the chat, or if you want to come off mute, you can do that as well. And you might hear my daughter on the phone with FaceTime. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to add one thing. As I was looking at the resentencing bill that passed both chambers today, it looks like anyone on probation or parole can petition the court and be potentially removed from supervision, which I don't think I realized during session. That's
Yeah.
really cool. I happen to be talking to a former client today who is still on supervised probation for his marijuana offenses from 11 years ago. And he's like, when can I get that petition going?
Soon tell him we got to get Glenn to sign this bill. We got to get Glenn to sign this bill. But yeah, that we really were trying to, that's that broad eligibility that still reaches pretty far. But it also just shows us how people may be living quote unquote free outside of a jail or prison, but they're still very much under the surveillance for a marijuana 11 years ago. That's wild. Yeah. Thanks, Josh. See you later. Anybody else have questions? I'm gonna, do we still have to include social equity program in our application? Jennifer, so the social equity program is the micro program. So if you meet any of those criteria that I mentioned before, then you would qualify for that particular micro license, which is a social equity license. They changed the name. Is that answer your question, Jennifer? Let us know. I'm going to take these last few minutes to talk about federal marijuana, since this is the CannaJustice Coalition. I don't know if y'all know, but there is something pretty big happening at the federal level right now. Back in 2022, Biden announced these big pardon announcements for marijuana, which got a lot of press. But the most important thing that happened in 2022 with that announcement is he also directed his administration to review the scheduling of marijuana. Right now, marijuana is a Schedule 1. It's the most restrictive classification of drugs out there. And it's actually really ridiculous that it's still there. And like, it's the reason why judges locally contest and say, well, it's still Schedule 1 federally, you're getting criminalized for it, right? There's still this in between. Well, Biden said, hey, Health and Human Services, hey, DEA, I need you to look into this and tell us, should it still be Schedule 1? Well, what's happening now is that the health services at the federal level has said Schedule 3. And we are now waiting for what the DEA will say. I'm here to tell you guys right now that Schedule 3 is not enough. I'm going to ask everybody that's still here to please copy and share this petition that Marijuana Justice has to tell Biden that Schedule 3 is not enough. Why isn't Schedule 3 enough, y'all? Let me tell you. Because Schedule 3 is honestly just a way for marijuana to be medically legal. Schedule 3 is also a way, wait for it, capitalism, wait for it, is also a way for banks to get their business exceptions and their business write-offs that you cannot get with a Schedule 1 drug because it's so restricted. The FDA says you can't do that with Schedule 1s, but Schedule 3s you can. So big cannabis gets their tax write-offs, they get their medical, and we still get the criminal penalties. And that's the problem. So we, Marijuana Justice, as well as a lot of partners federally and nationally, have gotten together to start this petition. And we're doing a lot of actions that also include going up to DC on April 18th. It's going to be a huge rally. It's Unity Day with our partners. Last Prisoner Project, that again has been working to make sure that we free all folks that are still inside for cannabis. You can register for that day there, for National Unity Day. And if you're just interested in learning more about what the heck I'm talking about at the federal level, here's our website, Decriminalize Marijuana. We explain all of it there. You can also see our petition on that site, and you can subscribe and follow along. These are some incredible experts at the federal level that I'm continuing to work with and learn from. And if you want to learn more, y'all, I got so much going on with weed because, it's almost that special month of April, right? So this Thursday, if you're interested to learn more about the federal level, you can join us at a snack and learn at, I believe it's 1:00 on Thursday, and come and listen to some of my amazing federal and national coalition members with United for Decrim talk about the federal pieces. So I've dropped in a lot of links. If you are subscribed to Marijuana Justice, you get these in your email all the time, and you can also hit us up at our Instagram and find out more. And I'm going to drop that in here as well. I don't see any questions right now, so we're going to keep it going and ask our coalition members just to share their info, how to follow them, and what else they have going on. Valerie, I'm going to kick it back up to you.
What I will say, first of all, I'm going to drop in the chat how you can follow us. Chelsea, thank you for putting our Insta in there. And that is the best way to keep up with us, is on Instagram. What we have going on right now, I'm telling you, we are going to be immersed in this study that JLARC is taking on for moving the Department of Juvenile Justice. If you have not already, we would please implore you, take our Redefine the Vital Signs survey. I'm going to drop the link for it in the chat when I'm done talking, because I can't multitask doing two things at once. And so help us ensure that there is a true representation of the Commonwealth across the Commonwealth, saying to JLARC that we want to see our children treated as children. We want them to be treated in ways that are going to help them to grow and to thrive, and not criminalized. And you can do that by taking this survey, and then once they start moving towards other pieces of the study, and as they reach out for more input, I will be, if you would like, you can also sign up, go to our website and sign up to get updates from us, because that's how we will let folks know, hey, there's something else we need. This is another way that you can get involved in this fight. We're also hosting conversations around the Commonwealth. Our next one is going to be April 18th. It's going to be in Charlottesville. So if you're in that area, avail yourself. The details will be showing up on our Instagram shortly. So follow us and stay tuned so that you can get that information. Then we also will be hosting one up north. So Rob will be knocking at your door saying, help us out, as we plan for that conversation around the Commonwealth up north in Northern Virginia. So that's what we've got going on. I am really, really hopeful that you all will indeed follow us, that you will take the survey, and that you will indeed lend your hands to the work of making sure that Virginia treats our children as children. Thanks, Chelsea.
All right, I'm going to kick it over to Kalmia.
Hey, y'all. First of all, I'm so jazzed to hear about all the work our coalition is doing. So come on, we did that, y'all. And to everyone that stuck around, thank y'all for sticking around. For Virginia Student Power Network, now that session is coming to a close, we are getting to the work that's the heart of our organization, which is our leadership development and really training folks up over the summer, the spring and the summer. So we'll be working on our fellowship program, which will hopefully have 2 phases this year, including action camp during the summer and a more like deep fellowship program in the fall for folks. So we are going to be fundraising for that. So get your wallets ready to support our fellows. And we also are going to continue with our issue campaigns and especially the work that we're doing around the rapid response organizing in support of Palestinian solidarity. We have some of our members, including our staff, who are going through some legal cases regarding some criminalization of their activism. So we have some support campaigns going on there. And we're looking forward to the end of this here spring semester so that we can really celebrate Black August this summer as well. So look out for some really exciting programming. I'm going to drop this chat here for ways to follow us. Instagram is the best way to get up-to-date information. And if you email us, we can also put you on our newsletter email list, which we'll be sending out actually this week for March. But there we have lots of ways to stay connected, and especially for young people, there's job opportunities, fellowship opportunities, and ways to grow yourselves and stay connected to us. I'll leave it there and pass it on to the next person.
I think that's me. Our next event is going to be actually kind of cool. It's a social justice. There's a social justice conference at Christopher Newport University in a few weeks, April 9th and 10th. One of our board members, Stephen Keener, is the director of the Center for Racial Equity, I think is the name of it. Something like that. And they do this conference. I think this is the 3rd year. We're doing a little pre-conference mixer. We're gonna have some live music on, it's a Monday night, 6 to 8:30. We're gonna have a band that was on America's Got Talent, I think. Lives in Virginia Beach. He went to VCU, I believe. BJ Griffin. So gonna have them playing and just kind of come out and say hello, meet some of our board and organization and staff, and should be fun. That's April 8th. And then we'll be, organizationally, we'll be taking the spring and summer to kind of step back and regroup and figure out what we're going to do in 2025, come up with our priorities for next year. As far as following us online, I think Kelly put our link in there to subscribe to our newsletter. And then we're also at Justice FWDVA on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So that's where you can find us.
All right, thank you. I was able to drop in the social justice conference. I went last year. It was great. Also dropping in your website one more time in case folks needed it. And I'm gonna drop in marijuana justice subscription. Oh, I just deleted it from my copy and paste because I was doing justice forward, but here it comes. So you can subscribe here. We email weekly. If there's a lot going on, you can hear a little bit more from us. But we're really excited for folks to learn a little bit more about what's going on federally, because it's going to affect us all. Like, we actually have a chance to push Biden to decriminalize marijuana nationwide. Like, if he wants to win the election, you're not doing student loans, you're getting weak on Palestine. Add this to the list, y'all. Seriously, add decrim to the list. So subscribe. We hope to see y'all out. And we thank you guys for coming so much. Thanks so much to the CannaJustice Coalition, as always. And we're here to legalize it right. And we're not going anywhere. So stay tuned for all of our platforms, because the governor has until about April 8th to decide on all of the bills. So make sure you're following. And again, thanks for coming, y'all. Peace. Bye, y'all.
Okay.
Yep, you ain't got to stay, girl. Go ahead, Lee.
Okay. Well, that was amazing. That was amazing.
Thanks.